Hey, deserving listeners, it's time to continue our journey watching 90 Day Fiancé. My name is Dr. Kirk Honda. I'm a therapist and a professor. Let's see if anything of interest comes out of my face.
Then something major happened. Like, my mother has infinite patience.
I don't do anything. She said that she's tired of leaving my house because you go to her and say, Larissa don't want to talk today, leave Larissa alone today.
Well, you're kind of a diva. You do have your days where you don't.
So it's my fault. You should to protect me. You know what your mother is.
All right, so if this conversation happened at an earlier point in their marriage, I would have had more hope, but I didn't have any hope for this one. I didn't show all the clips because, honestly, it's hard to watch. The amount of toxicity in this household is very high, and it's hard to watch. I've said that before. There are other couples that I actually really like watching, or at least I don't mind watching, or I look forward to seeing what happens next. With this one, at this point in the story, maybe in the first season I was on board, but this second season, pretty much the entire season, I've just been, I don't know, and it's kind of dreading it. And so some scenes I'll watch, like there was a whole scene where Debbie and Larissa were fighting in the car, and I had to look away. It was hard to watch people be that way with each other. And I didn't know what to say. It was predictable. They clearly hate each other and have for a while now. They didn't hate each other always, but they hate each other now. They were being mean to each other, and I don't know. Another part of me just doesn't want to put that out there in the world of beyond a certain threshold. It's just like, I don't know, just you can watch the show yourself and just see how horrible it is. But Larissa was kicked out of the car, and then the producers drove her to her appointment or something, and she was waiting for Colt to come home. Colt comes home, and she's like, I need you to kick out your mom. They haven't, from my knowledge, had any bonding moments for, I think, weeks. They haven't had any positive moments. They've ignored each other. According to Colt, she's been ignoring him. I don't know what Colt has been doing to her, but they clearly, I think, have decided weeks ago that they didn't want to be married anymore. I don't know. Maybe they are still married at this point. Maybe they turn this around. It's hard to imagine. But Larissa's waiting for Colt, and she says, I need you to kick out your mom. Well, in another circumstance, that could have been a productive conversation where they could have talked about, okay, I hear you, but I'm guessing where Colt is coming from is, why would I kick out my mom? I don't even like you. I don't think Colt and Larissa like each other. I don't know if they've liked each other for a long time, honestly. And so Colt resists, and in his normal way, and says, well, you're not nice to my mom, so I'm sure there's another side of the story. And then he calls her a name. He says that she's a diva. So obviously this is not going to be helpful. And I could talk about how it's not a helpful way to talk to each other, but maybe the clinical thing I could say is that you have to come to the table. If you're going to have a conversation about anything, really, but about something sensitive like this, you have to have both people coming to the table in good faith. And I don't think either one of them were coming to the table with good faith. I think they were acting like they were, but I don't think they were. And the outcome was a result of that. That's just my clinical opinion on that one. So it's no wonder that the conversation didn't go well. Let's continue watching. Hey, deserving listeners, as you know, I'm constantly recommending that people go to therapy. We all need therapy from time to time. One of the options available that is definitely worth checking out is BetterHelp.com. So if you're looking for a therapist, I would give it a try by going to BetterHelp.com/Kirk. Make sure you use the /Kirk because you get 10% off your first month, and it helps us out. I get a lot of emails from you saying that you're looking for a therapist. As you watch these videos, I know many of you have been motivated to find your own therapist, but I know it can be really hard to find a good one to work with. Like I said, one of the options available to try is BetterHelp.com/Kirk. And you should know that this service is available to clients worldwide, which is amazing. I've been told that you can start communicating with your therapist in under 24 hours. You can message with your counselor anytime. Plus, you can schedule weekly video or phone sessions. And I've been told that it's often less expensive than in-person therapy. So go to BetterHelp.com/Kirk to get 10% off your first month of therapy today.
He first talked to his mother, then he blaming me of everything. It's a really sick situation that a man can just say, okay, now I understand, my mother is wrong. He closed his eyes of his mother behavior and he pretend that is nothing.
And she's making me crazy. I want to stand next to my wife. I want to work with her, but Larissa keeps antagonizing my mother.
Wow. So, Jack Daniels, it can be nice on rocks. You sip it while you're watching Nick Offerman look at a Yule log. Does anyone? Every Christmas I watch Nick Offerman. We stare at each other through the TV. And I don't, if you know what I'm talking about, you know what I'm talking. Anyway, the point is, Jack Daniels, it's fine, sipping with some ice, but he just downed it. Now, I'm not going to judge it. It's fine. People drink alcohol. I have alcohol now and then. It's fine. But that was interesting. I mean, that's hard to do, by the way. Like, alcohol has a reaction on your mouth and throat that makes it not want to do that. It's hard to drink just straight liquor like it's water. That was, that's interesting. I don't know what that means. We haven't seen it. Does he drink all the time? I don't know. Sometimes people need a little bit of alcohol, but that is a lot of whiskey, by the way. I would just take a guess and say that was probably like 5 ounces, maybe more, in one sitting. That's, it's going to do something to you over the next hour. So this situation is so toxic, I don't even want to talk about them. Let's bounce from them to another topic, or let's expand this to alcohol. Let's talk about that. They don't usually give us a chance to talk about that. So let's talk about that for a second. So I have never seen someone that had a problem with any substance who wasn't traumatized. Everyone I've ever treated who either came to me because of their addiction or came to me with something else, and then we found out they had a substance abuse problem or issue, has always had trauma as the cause. And the general trauma that I talk about, usually relational trauma, meaning that their parents abused them. That's a pretty easy one to identify. Or that their parents were cold and neglecting, meaning that there were too many kids in the house, or the parents worked too much, or one of the parents was depressed, or there was a lot of conflict between the parents, or there was a divorce, or the parents had to move around too much, or there was political or war strife that the family was going through, and that put pressure on the parents. They didn't have enough resources to pay attention to the kids. Or an older sibling was terrorizing the kid, or the kid was being bullied a lot at school for one reason or another. Something along those lines. There are other examples as well, but those are the common ones. And when you go through that, the child is... So I think we can all understand that children do not feel secure in the world. 3-year-olds can't walk out the door and hail a cab and go to a restaurant, order food, get a credit card, get a job. I'm playing it as a joke, but the point is that kids are very scared of the world and they depend on their parents. Young kids don't even like interacting with other humans. They don't even like being in another room. They need to be, for them to feel safe and not afraid, they need your attention and they need you to be there, or they need a caregiver to be there, a grandparent, a trusted teacher or something. When they are attuned to and when they feel like they're in proximity to that attachment figure, then they are relaxed. And when they're not around that person, when they're denied that, then their distress goes up. When you are exposed to a lot of stress, a lot of emotional stress early in life, that changes your physiology. And one could say that it's an adaptive mechanism of, well, if you go through a lot of stress from 0 to 6, then maybe biologically it's a good idea if we ramp up your hypervigilance, because it appears that you live in a scary world and thus you probably should be on edge. Otherwise, you might die from whatever is threatening you. It's a crude way that our body reacts to our environment. We're very adaptive creatures, and that's one of the ways that you could say that we adapt. And when we grow up and we're 20 years old, or let's rewind it, we're like 14 years old, 15 years old, and we're having raging hormones, and we're starting to venture out, and we're having that distress, and we don't feel like we can turn to people for help because they haven't historically done that for us. We don't feel like we can turn to anyone for help. What do? We're just alone with our distress level. We have no way of calming ourselves down. We don't even have a way to turn to ourselves, because in order to soothe the self, someone has to soothe us. When people soothe us at the age of 2 and 1 and earlier, we internalize that, and thus we can soothe the self. If no one soothed us growing up, we cannot rely on the self to soothe. And thus, we're completely alone. We can't soothe ourselves. We can't turn to other people because we don't trust them. And so we're just alone with our stress. Well, what do? All teenagers will experiment with different substances, not all, but most, marijuana, alcohol, other kinds of things, maybe even cutting, non-suicidal self-injury. And kids will learn through experimentation that, when I'm drunk, I am no longer in stress for the first time in my life. When I took that Vicodin after having my wisdom teeth pulled, for the very first time in my life, I felt normal. When I smoked that bowl and I was with my friends and I was watching Ren and Stimpy and I was eating Cheetos, for the first time in my life, I felt okay. For the first time in my life. And you'll hear people say that, particularly when it comes to opiates and heroin, opioids. Those have a powerful effect on people. That's why people abuse them. And so what'll happen is they'll naturally say, well, I want to repeat that. I want to repeat that feeling. You mean to tell me that all I got to do is score a bottle of Jack Daniels and I'll be normal, I'll feel okay for 3 or 4 nights as I drink this? Okay, sure, there are consequences, like I can't do my homework, or I don't sleep well, or I might even get in trouble, or I've got to do favors to someone to make sure that I can score it. But that's a small price to pay, man, for non-stress feeling. Now, kids won't say that. 14-year-olds aren't going to say that. What they're going to say is, I just like to smoke pot. It's cool. Or I just like to drink. I like to drink with my friends. It's a fun thing. Everyone drinks. That's, they won't say, well, you know what? I'm traumatized. That's why I use this substance. I'm self-medicating. They're not going to say that. 1, they don't know it. 2, they don't trust you, because remember, they were traumatized and they learned not to be vulnerable, because that just meant you were more vulnerable to being abused or neglected or harmed or something. And they don't know. They might be semi-conscious of what's happening. All they know is, like, when I use that substance, it's cool and I feel so much better. And when I'm sober, things are bad. And so then they start using. Their grades start to go down. They get in with the wrong crowd. They sneak out at night. They start getting in trouble. Their grades start to go down. This is a universal pattern, by the way. Anyone who has been with a kid like this, I specialized, about a third of my clients early in my career were all these teenagers. They were almost always 14 years old, by the way. I had some 13, some 15, but 14 is like the average time when the crap hits the fan. And their grades are going down and they're getting in trouble. And you know what? You can't get high at school, so you might as well skip school. And you know what? School makes me feel bad, and getting high with my friends makes me feel good, so let's get away from that. No one's listening to me anymore. My abusive parents are being even meaner to me now. They're starting to yell at me. The teachers are yelling at me, and everyone knows that adults don't care about my feelings anyway, so screw this noise. I just give up. I give up on school. I give up on my parents. I give up on rules. I'm going to run away. I'm not going to clean my room. I'm going to steal money from my parents. Relationship starts to go down the tubes even more. You know what? My parents don't care about me at all. In extreme cases, it's like, oh, but now there's these other people that really love me, and they want to spend time with me all the time, and they have a job for me to do. I'm going to just sell marijuana for them. And then you start getting into drug dealing, then you start getting into gang activity. Now you have to live in essentially a mini cult, and you have to commit crimes or violence or something. Sometimes they're not like that. But a lot of these gangs are answers to the traumas of life that these kids went through. And then society will look at you and say, what a deadbeat kid, what a loser. That kid doesn't have any willpower. Now you hate society. Police start harassing you. Now you hate police. And society has forgotten about you. Now you're homeless. Now you don't know. Now you're living under a bridge and you're trying to survive. And now you're addicted. And now you're totally ashamed. And you don't know what to do. The substances are no longer actually taking away your distress. Now you're looking for some other answer for your distress. Therapists haven't listened to you because they didn't know what to do, and they were chastising me too, or they were agreeing with my parents. And, it just goes from there. Now, not everyone goes that far down the road, but most of the kids will go to the point where I said skipping school and giving up on rules and only hanging out with your kids and using all the time. And the thing about kids is that when they fall off the cliff into addiction, they really fall off fast. Now, I'm talking about teenagers, but adults will do this too. Again, teenagers aren't a different species. So they're just younger adults. And so people will do this as an adult too. But they usually will discover the magic of substances when they're young. And sometimes it's alcohol. Given all this, it shouldn't be a surprise that a lot of people will say, well, I drink to drown my feelings. You'll see people say that as a joke. But it's real for a lot of people. Now, for those people who have that trauma history, the temptation or the usefulness, the utility that substances provide is so unique because there isn't medication. It's not, we call it self-medicating, but that implies that there's another medication that trauma survivors can take that can mitigate those things. There isn't really. There are other kinds of psychotropics, but you end up just abusing those as well, benzodiazepines in particular. So it perhaps is the only way that they can quickly help themselves with their trauma. Now, the only way you can heal in a healthy way from your trauma is probably through relational and exposure therapy with a therapist, which is not happy times. When I help people with their trauma and relational traumas, it's hard. Some of you out there have been through some of that work. When someone comes to me with relational traumas and they ask me to help them, well, we have to develop an intense relationship because that's what's going to heal them. That's what's going to provide the corrective experience to offset and heal the neglect and trauma that they went through from caregivers when they were young. They have to experience a relationship that cares about them so that they can learn, I am lovable, and I can trust other people. That's when neurons change and people are able to soothe themselves and all those kinds of things. And so, but as they intensify their relationship with therapists, they will become very afraid of their therapist because in the past, the closer they got to someone, the more vulnerable they got with someone, the more prone to harm, and harm was always around the corner. And so the closer they get, and as they go down the healing journey, the more terrified the client gets. And that is no joke. And the higher the abuse and neglect was for the kid, the higher the fear will be. We call this, there's fearful transference. I've done whole episodes on it. I get a lot of emails about it. And the pain when your therapist is just a little off that week and isn't listening to you all that well, the pain of that is going to feel so much more worse. So it has its problems. And then if you are going to be truly healed from your traumas, you have to probably do exposure therapy, some version of it, EMDR, other kinds of exposure therapies. And that is designed to create some level of distress, a tolerable level of distress, meaning that it's like a 4 out of 10 and not an 8 out of 10. But it's still a distress, and you habituate to that stress level and you keep exposing until you don't have any stress about the memories and the trauma anymore, and then you recover and you heal. Well, that's work too. That's hard. So when we look at people who have substance abuse problems. I don't know if Colt does. But when we look at that, I hope that's what you see, because that's what I've seen in my 20 plus years as a clinician without fail. I used to work at a clinic that only treated people with substance abuse problems, and I was the therapist on staff, and I worked alongside all of the chemical dependency folks, and I got a pretty good dose, if you will, of clients who had severe, substance abuse problems. The other thing I'd like to dispel is that people with substance abuse problems are normal human beings. They have jobs, they have families, they smile, they comb their hair, they shower every day, they pay their taxes, they watch Breaking Bad. They do everything normal, because there's a lot of these ideas, and I'll admit I used to have these ideas when I was younger too, that alcoholics and heroin addicts they look different, the junkie look, or the alcoholic at the bar just drinking away. Certainly those people might also suffer from issues, but the vast majority, I don't know the percentage, but 99%, when I think of someone who suffers from heroin addiction, I think of someone who works at a tech job in Seattle, because that's all the heroin addicts that I treated, people who suffered from heroin addiction. They all had tech jobs in Seattle, because that's what most people do in Seattle, is work at tech, at Amazon and Google and Facebook and all these things. And so try to get that out of your head as well. And we can do so much better by these people by not ostracizing them when they're 14, by helping them to see that they have been traumatized and that they deserve to heal from that. And we need to have more clinicians that understand that so they can provide that service. And we need to vote for politicians that allocate the money so that we can pay for those services, because so many people, even though they want that service, they can't access it, which is a crime on humanity.
So much has happened between Larissa and I in the past few months. After everything I've done for Larissa, she gives me zero respect and zero love.
And we're right back to the toxicity. I don't use the word toxic lightly. It gets thrown around a lot, which is fine. It's not a clinical word. But why am I using it with this family? I'm using it with this family because from the moment that Larissa and Colt met, it seemed to me that they weren't really interested in listening to each other, in loving each other, in being vulnerable and being real and authentic with each other. They seemed to be from the very first episode, when Larissa got off the plane and Colt was driving her around town. It seemed to me, looking back, I didn't see it at the time, but when I consider what's happening now and I look all the way back, I see just a lot of masking of hurt and pain and traumas with hostility and anger and distance and obscuring things, trying to win. That's often an element of toxicity, is people are in a state of trying to win. They're trying to humiliate the other. They're trying to prevail over the other person. And even when they're talking quietly and calmly, they're waiting to win. And that's part of the toxicity that I see in this family. It's not an inherent thing. It's not like their personalities are toxic. It's the dynamic and pattern that they developed over time. It's become toxic, and it's hard to watch. And with other couples that I would watch, they would have big conflicts, but there was some core that wanted to work it out with the other person when they calmed down. I don't think this family has had that from the beginning. Maybe around the wedding, they seemed happy when they got married, but weddings are happy affairs, and so that's not really a great indication of something. So anyway, let's continue watching.
Oh, Coach, stop to be a okay? Go there and talk to the bitch. She's a
Larissa, I just got home.
I don't want the kitchen dirty anymore. New rules of the kitchen. My stuff, I will clean everything. Why you don't talk to your mother?
Larissa, I just got home. What?
Do you care? Why are you so afraid of it safe?
I mean, I don't know why is this being filmed? Why am I watching this? What is happening? let's just continue watching it, I guess.
Things to her. You try to lie her like she was your little lover.
That's kind of gross.
It's gross, yes, but you act like this.
Do you feel better about yourself after you said that?
You as fat, big.
Right. So there are times that we've seen on the show, and I've seen in real life, where you might have a conflict like this. But it's in the context of love at times and wanting to be in the relationship. I don't know if these two have ever wanted to be in a relationship with each other. I'd have to assume that there might be that down there, but when I think about it as a whole, I just wonder if they ever really liked each other, just wanted something good for the other person. There seems to be some evidence that it was a quid pro quo from the beginning, where she says, okay, I'll give you this, and then you'll give me this. And we don't have to want to give each other those things. It's just an arrangement that we have. She talked about that pretty extensively in this season. And it just makes me really sad, and it's just hard to watch. And it's sad to think that it's on a TV show. I mean, it's reality TV, so it's supposed to have moments like this, but I don't know. It seems like there should be a line where the producers be like, this is beyond. We'll just have one of those things that says, we filmed a bunch of stuff. The fighting got real nasty verbally. We decided we weren't going to show it. It's just awful. And then she has kids. They're going to eventually watch this show. Are they watching this show? All right, well, that does it for that grueling episode of Psychology in Seattle and What I Watch 90 Day Fiancé Happily Ever After. Everyone out there, take time to detoxify, take some deep breaths, hug your loved ones and animals, and take care of yourself because you deserve it. You really, really do.